Hey book friends, welcome back to the channel. So today's video is a bit of an in with the new, out with the old sort of video where I talk about the books I finished and read in December as well as the books I'm so excited to read in January. So I'm not sure if I'm going to keep this style of video going where I do a TBR as well as a wrap up in the same video. I might, just because I don't read a ton of books, but it was really convenient for this time of year because we had a ton of family, we had a ton of things going on over the holidays, and I just didn't have time to film. So you get a bit of both, a bit of what I've read and a bit of what I'm excited for. So let's just hop into all of the books. Hey friends, my name is Angie. Welcome to the channel, or welcome back to the channel, all the stuff. So like I said, we're going to be doing my December wrap up, which is 5 books. And we are going to be doing my January TBR, which is also 5 books. So I feel like that is the perfect balance of chatting books. So let's just hop into what I read. We'll start with these 2. So I read 2 very large books in December and I loved them, you guys. So these 2 books are the first 2 books in the Rook and the Rose trilogy by M.A. Carrick. M.A. Carrick is actually 2 different authors, Marie Brennan and Alec Helms. They write together. And I watched an author interview on Angela's channel, Literature Science Alliance. I'll link it above because it was so good. If you're interested in these books, that video got me the most excited about them because it was really fun to hear how the authors put this world together because it's a very world heavy series. So I'm going to put these down just because they're heavy. And I'll pop the pictures up. But the basics of the plot for this series is there is this orphan girl named Gwen who traveled back to her hometown of Nadezra in order to run this really long con. Basically, she wanted to join a house, a nobility house, pretend to be a noblewoman, and then skip town, right? To have a bunch of money so that her and her sister could leave town and be set. And within that first book, she's very much setting herself up. She is tentatively accepted into this house, and she has to do a lot of political maneuvering within this quite complex world. And it's complex in the sense of almost like people groups. Like there's these 2 main people groups within the same city, and there's a lot of history going on as to why one, more of the noble class is oppressing the lower class, but the lower class was their first sort of idea. And it goes into all of that. And you get introduced to all of these really intricate, amazing characters, which is part of what I loved about the book. It's not just her character as she's trying to manipulate others. You follow some of these other characters who are not exactly who they seem. Like their character arcs are really growing as the series is going on, and I'm just really enjoying it. And so I don't want to say much more than that, other than the fact that if you really enjoy a character-driven novel with which there is just this really intricate, interesting world and political system, this is such a good book. Although you do have to pay attention. I did end up having to read the first one twice to really get a handle on the people and the world and who's all important. And there is a glossary of like who's in what house and all of this stuff, which I highly recommend if you pick the book up. But I finished book 1 and 2 in December, and you'll see in my January TBR, I just want to finish up the series because I'm so invested, and also the world is really fresh in my head. It's a hard series to put down and pick up, in my opinion. And so I read those 2 books, both 5 stars. Like, I am really enjoying the series. And so that's the first 2 of 5 books. I do have a couple more. So I picked up an Agatha Christie book this December, and I really enjoyed it. Like, I believe I gave this one 4 stars. And so this is Hercule Poirot's Christmas by Agatha Christie. I haven't read an Agatha Christie in a little bit, but I'm so glad I hopped back into this one because it has one of my favorite tropes in mystery books, which is a closed door mystery. You guys, there was only so many characters. There's only so many people it could be, and it was so fun to see who it was in the end. I always have so much fun with these kinds of books because I'm constantly predicting who I think did it. And so the basics of this story is there's this family where the grandfather, or the father, I guess is the best way to put it, the father of the family who has reached old age and just wants his family around him, invites everybody back. Even though there is a lot of estrangement within this family, there's a lot of backstory, there's a lot of things that happened in the past, there's a lot of hurt feelings. And so they all come for various reasons. And then, you probably guessed it, the dad dies. So he is murdered in a locked room, and there's only so many players, mostly family members as well as like household servants that could have done it. And it's so good. It's really, really fun. Like, I feel like Agatha Christie does such a good job of crafting characters in the sense that I never quite understand their motives. And she definitely doesn't make them out to be like good people. Like, they're always struggling, they always have issues, and you really want to know who did it. So I actually really recommend this. This was a really fun book. I think the first chapter was December 22nd, which is actually when I started this book. So I highly recommend this for next Christmas. I mean, you can read it whenever, but it was really enjoyable to read over Christmas. So I loved that book. And then another book that I loved, and I've talked about already because it made it on my favorite books of the year, was this book. So The Atlas Six by Olivia Blake. Guys, I love this book. It's very dark academia with some fantastical elements. And for me, that is a good combination. I love dark academia. I love the secret history. This book, though, took a little different turn. It's basically about these 6 individuals who are called Medians, and they have magical giftings, but they have been trained. Like, they went to magical university or whatever, and they have basically special powers or gifts, and like telepathy or dreams or plants or all these things that they can manipulate and utilize. And so they are offered this opportunity to join the Alexandrian Society or be a part of the initiate class. But the catch is, at the end of the year, 1 person is kicked out, basically. So 5 will be accepted for initiation and 1 won't. 1 will have to leave. So it's so good. What I loved about this and why I feel like this really landed with me, 1, I do appreciate a bit of like snobbery in these types of books where they're kind of entitled. They're usually like rich kids who think they're special. And then there's times within the book where they're either taken down a notch or they realize they're not as special as they thought they were. And it's kind of a mess as they're working together to form alliances, to figure out if they're going to work as a team and to figure out who's not going to make it. It's like kind of a competition. Guys, it's so much fun. And then by the end, you kind of realize the overarching plot that will tie this into a full trilogy, because I'm currently reading the 2nd one and the 3rd one comes out shortly. So I really enjoyed this book. So there's that. Okay, and then this book comes out of nowhere, honestly. And it's because I joined Angela's Patreon, which I already talked about her. She's fantastic. The reason I joined is because I wanted to test out science fiction. And she's the one that I really vibe with her fantasy recommendations. So I thought I could try out some science fiction. And so this isn't necessarily a recommendation of hers. It was a buddy read that she was running off of Patreon. And it's called The Surviving Sky by Kritika H. Rayo, or however you say that. Now, this is a debut novel, I'm pretty sure. And it's the first in a trilogy, which I didn't realize until the end of the book. And I'm still trying to decide if I want to go on with it. So this book is set kind of in a future world where people have been pushed off of Earth into kind of flight. And in this case, they're flying on these kind of plants. It's a little complicated, but basically Earth is not inhabitable. There's these Earth rages or storms that happen and people cannot live there. And so 8,000 years ago, people left the planet, and occasionally they will go back down to the planet to kind of recharge during the lulls in these Earth storms. Then they'll be forced back into flight. And so you're following these 2 main characters who are a married couple, which is something I really enjoy. I feel like I'm drawn to and gravitate towards married couples in books. Now, in this book, they have a complicated marriage. There's a lot of hurt and misunderstanding. And as the book progresses, you are seeing that they're trying to fix it, but they're a bit stubborn and juvenile in some ways, and they're not doing a good job at communicating. But at the same time, there's hurt and you have to kind of build back trust. And so I vibed with that most of the time. Sometimes I was a little frustrated with their relationship, but most of the time I did want to see them come back together. But the setup is that the husband is what's called an architect. And the architects are involved in keeping these flying like jungles afloat. They're the flight architects, basically. So they have a magic of sorts. And so that is the magic trajection. That's what it's called, trajection. So they have the ability to traject, which is like control plants and make them do what they want, basically. And so that part, the magic and the world, was really interesting. How they could manipulate the plants, how they could produce flight, all these things that you kind of get thrown into at the beginning. And the world is really fascinating, and you hope it gets like explained a bit better, and it does by the end, but it is still kind of like you have to pay attention. And so anyway, the husband is an architect and the wife is an archaeologist, which is not a respected field. She is interested in kind of Earth and why certain species have survived on Earth, but they're surviving in kind of these altered gigantic forms, like a gigantic elephant sort of idea, in order to withstand these Earth storms. So that's kind of the basic setup. This first book feels like it's a lot about their relationship. It also has an overarching plot of these Earth storms are getting worse. The flying jungles have less time to land on Earth and recharge, and so things are getting harder and they need to start solving some things. And the husband and wife are very central to some of these things that are getting figured out. Now, it definitely had some debut novel tendencies. It was a little jumpy. I feel like the plot was very centered on this couple and their relationship, but then it would shift into super fast-paced plot that was kind of breakneck, and that these characters within that fast plot didn't act in the way I felt like they should have based on the setup of the couple and their relationship. So that really was my critique of it, but all in all, I enjoyed it. I found it to be a very enjoyable book. I liked the setup. I liked kind of the reveals by the end to understand a bit more about the world, this magic, how it affected things and these gigantic animals. All of this stuff gets explained mostly. I feel like you just kind of have to go with it. At times you don't totally understand. But then I found out it's like a trilogy, and I'm just not sure if I'm going to go on, but I might. I mean, I enjoyed it. And I was rooting for the couple, which, as I was reading this in the buddy read on Patreon, a lot of people did not like the relationship at all. So I feel like I was a little bit in the minority for that. But it was kind of fun. It was different. It's very different. So The Surviving Sky. That's what I also read in December. So those were the 5 books I read in December, which is a pretty good month for me. But now let's shift into January. Okay. I'm excited for January. I have a couple things going on. First being, I did bring back my reading challenge, which I can link the video above if you haven't seen it. It's a very casual challenge, but this year I also included a buddy reading element for anybody who wanted to read the book that I was planning on reading for the challenge. And so I'm planning on reading this book this month. It's What the River Knows by Isabel Ibanez. Actually, I'm about 100 pages in. And I'm really enjoying it. I'm really enjoying it, you guys. And if you want to join me and buddy read this, you can just join down below the Discord. It's all free. And so this book is a YA mystery thriller. It says it's a mix between The Mummy and Death on the Nile, which so far I am feeling that. I'm enjoying the main character. Her name is Inez, and she is kind of from the well-to-do family in early 19th century Argentina. And so that part's really fun. It's like the historical aspect where you're kind of following her character as she's like, I think she's like 17 or 18 years old. And she is from the elite class, so you get to kind of see what she's wearing and all like the expectations on her as like a young woman in society sort of idea. So I love that. But I also love her spunky character who pushes back against that. And really, instead of just kind of accepting that life, she wants to be more like her parents, who are these famous archaeologists who spend half of their time in Egypt doing excavation of the different pharaoh tombs and all of these things, because you're talking early 1800s, and the parents have never wanted her there, so she's constantly missing them. And then they mysteriously die, and she decides to kind of throw all caution to the wind and go to Egypt. And the plot goes from there. This is YA, and there is a little bit of romance, which I didn't quite realize, but so far so good. So I'm really liking this book, and again, join me if you want to. But that is the first thing that I'm for sure reading. The next thing is a rollover from December. I just couldn't finish it, you guys. I wanted to finish it, but it just didn't happen. And that's the second book in the Atlas 6 trilogy. I don't know if it has a name. I'll call it the Atlas 6 trilogy. And this is the Atlas Paradox, again by Olivia Blake. And this continues the story of the 5, because remember in the first book, there were only 5 who made it through that first year and are officially initiated into the Alexandrian Society. Now there's more going on. It has slowed down a bit, so see my wrap up for this book as to how it finishes out. but I am still enjoying it because I really do enjoy the characters. So this will be finished in January in order that I get the third book, which is coming out in January, and I'm not sure exactly when it's coming out, here shortly. And so that is the Atlas Complex. So this finishes out the trilogy. I got it from my library. Actually, you guys, side note, I have reserved a lot of new releases from the library. This is the first year I've been so organized. Like, I think I even took a screenshot of all the different things. One, that I am just interested in all of these books, but as you can see, I have been able to get on the list, and I should be able to get them on pretty much release day because I'm so ahead of the game. And so, like I said, one of those will be the third book in the Atlas 6 series. So hopefully I will be able to wrap up this series come January, which again is one of my goals for this year, is just to read series as I'm enjoying them. So the Atlas Complex is definitely going to get read, as well as another finish to a series. So I'm glad I'm actually combining my wrap up with my TBR, because you can see there's a lot of overlap in different series. And so this is the third and final book in the Rook and the Rose trilogy by M.A. Carrick. It's called Labyrinths Heart. I'm 20 pages into it. I'm so jazzed to be back in this world. Like, I read those 20 pages last night, and some of the characters, like Vargo, I really love his character. I enjoy the spunkiness of it, and to just be back in the story, it's just fun, you guys. I can't wait to finish this, and I will let you know how it all goes. Yes, this is another one on my TBR. And then the last one, the last book on my TBR was also in that list of library holds, and that is The Fury by Alex Michaelides. Okay, I did not enjoy The Silent Patient, only because it was more psychological than I like. I don't typically like psychological thrillers at all. I actually made a video about books I'd recommend if you also don't like psychological thrillers, and that's where The Silent Patient fell for me. But upon reading the synopsis of his new book, I feel like it is something I would really like. It has a bit of a closed door or closed island mystery sort of setting. So, and then there were none. And so there's this like retired famous Hollywood actress who invites her best friends to her private island to just relax and recuperate. And then there's murder. And then they're cut off because I think it's like a windstorm, some kind of thing cuts them off, which is a standard trope in those kinds of books. But you guys, I eat it up. I love that synopsis. So I'm gonna give Alex Michaelides another try and read The Fury this month. I'm so excited. All right, guys, I forgot a book that is also on my January TBR, so I'm gonna pop it in here. And that book is another Agatha Christie. It's And Then There Were None. I'm so excited for this book. This book is actually a buddy read for Patreon for Gwen's channel. I will link her down below as well. And it's also part of this really fun reading challenge she's running over there that has to do with, like, some of us are manor guests, some of us are killers, and it's like this big team challenge competition where people get kind of killed off. It's pretty fantastic. She comes up with very creative things, so I highly recommend Gwen's Patreon. But we're reading this, and I'm so excited. It's a reread for me. I've read it before. It was actually one of my favorite books, I think, of 2020, and it really started my love of Agatha Christie, which obviously hasn't stopped. So I love this book, and I love any retellings that are based off this book, where there's like I said, an island, strangers, everybody gets murdered. Who's the killer? I just love it. So I'm also reading that. So that's what I have. That's what I have for this video. Let me know about your thoughts on anything I've read or am about to read. These lists definitely intermix this month because I'm trying to finish some series that I'm really loving, honestly. And so I hope you all are doing well. I hope you're as excited for this reading year as I am. It's going to be really good. So that's all I have. Like the video if you liked it, subscribe if you want to. And otherwise, you guys, I will see you in the next book video. All right, take care.